our brand new March. So far we have been working really hard on the foundational skills for our narrative writing. Working on our main character, our plot, and descriptive writing. Today, we're going to take all those skills together and start finally drafting and writing down our own creation and our narrative story. I think today is a very exciting day because we finally get to start using all our imagination and putting it down on paper in writing. So, let's check out our learning target for Monday. It says, I can draft, remember that's to write for the first time, draft the introduction of my story to describe the main character and setting. So we are starting drafting the next step in our writing process where we're starting just for the first time to get our story down on paper. And we're starting with the introduction where we're going to meet two very important parts. The main character, who our story is about, and the setting, where the story takes place. These are super important aspects to start off our brand new story. So like we mentioned, we are starting with the introduction. We're just going to focus on one paragraph at a time during the writing process to make sure we can really make it our best. So remember, in the introduction is where we get to meet that main character and the setting. It's where we want to grab our reader's attention and make sure that they're hooked in and they're really invested in our story. After the introduction, we'll draft our problem, the big happening to our main character, and then our third paragraph, the ending, is the solution, how the problem gets solved. So we're going to work through the 3 paragraphs in our story over the next few days to draft each one and focus on different skills. So today, in the introduction, like we mentioned, there are 2 main parts that everyone is going to include and write about in their story. We need to meet, of course, so your reader, when they're reading your writing, they're going to meet the main character. They're going to meet the main character. For example, mine is Mr. Mo. I chose Mr. Mo as my main character. And in the introduction, I'm going to describe him, show him to my reader so they can really learn about who the story is about. In addition to meeting the main character, your reader is going to learn where the story takes place. Where the story takes place. The setting. This setting can be a real place that you've been to or seen, or it can be a completely made up place that you create in your imagination. Either way, your story needs a place where it happens. So as we're describing our main character, we need to also include in our introduction where they are. So your reader has a very clear picture of what they're about to read about. And second grade, as we're including all these great details in our introduction, we want to bring in those important descriptive writing skills that we worked on last week. Telling versus showing, where our reader is only reading the words on our page. They're not watching a movie or a picture. So it's up to us with our words to show the reader the image in our own minds and show them our character and the events in the story. So we're going to avoid telling our reader what happens, and instead we're going to show them what happens. For example, what we don't want to do is if I just told you in my writing, Mr. Mo is a monster. That is true. I told you he's a monster, but that's all you know. And you can't really picture exactly what Mr. Mo looks like. A monster could really be anything. So I just told you a little bit. But what's way more interesting if I show you who Mr. Mo is and what he looks like. So for example, if I wrote instead, Mr. Mo is a blue fluffy monster with a crooked smile and striped horns. You can see and picture Mr. Mo so much better. He's blue fluffy monster with a crooked smile and striped horns. In one sentence with my words, I explained 3 different aspects of the way Mr. Mo looks. It is so much better and more interesting to see what the writer is writing about. So remember, we want to avoid telling our reader about our character, and instead we want to show them our character with our words. Okay, so we've got a lot of awesome skills to work with today, but that's why writing is so awesome. So now, to help us prepare and get our brains going, can you get out your plot map? Yours might not be in a roller coaster. Remember, it was the one that was in like 3 columns. But find your plot map that you created last week with your introduction, problem, and solution, where you brainstormed little bits of what you were going to write about in each paragraph. So make sure you have out your plot map for your own story. Okay, 2nd grade. I want us to just take some time. Can you review, look over, what did you write in for the introduction of your story? What did you choose were super important characteristics that you wanted to write about your character? Can you look in that introduction section? What did you write down? Let's take a look. So for Mr. Mo, I chose what was really important and I wanted to include was that Mr. Mo was helpful. One of his traits, his actions are helpful. He likes to cook, something he likes to do. He has a big family, like his background, where he comes from. And also that he's friendly, a character trait. So I wrote these down in my introduction because I really wanted to include them when I started drafting. Also remember, our introduction, who our character is, has to connect to our problem. So we really want to make sure that we're including what we brainstormed, so when we continue drafting, it connects back to our problem. So make sure you're really looking over and stick to what you wrote on your plot map. Okay, 2nd grade. So, for today, I'm going to show and model to you how I took my brainstorm and I can turn it into a first draft of the introduction of my story. But before we get there, let's give ourselves a break in writing real quick before we start modeling. So, can you stand up with me so we can give ourselves a break today? Okay, so this or that. Would you rather use huge utensils, so like a huge fork or spoon, like really, really big? If so, you're going to do elephant stomps. Or would you rather use tiny utensils, like really, really small fork or spoon? If so, you're going to do bunny hops. So, would you rather use big utensils or small utensils? What do you think? It's a hard one. I think I would use small utensils. I think it might be maybe a bit easier. I'm not sure. But I'm going to choose small utensils. So I'm going to do bunny hops. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you so much for being silly with me. Okay, so can you come sit back down in your seat? Our time for a brain break is over. And we're going to see how I take my plot map and turn it into a paragraph. Okay, second grade. So, I have my piece of paper set up, and I'm going to make sure to start writing all the way by the red line. So in your notebook or your piece of paper, we're going to make sure to start all the way over on the red line. And to begin my paragraph and the introduction, I of course want to make sure that I give my characters name and a very important trait about them. So, let me see. Helpful. I think this story is all about Mr. Mo being helpful, so I want to make sure that goes right at the start of my story. So let's see. Mr. Mo was a helpful monster. And that's true. Mr. Mo was a helpful monster, so I described what he was. And now I want to include, where is Mr. Mo? Where's the setting of the story? Mr. Mo was a helpful monster who lived in the quiet town of Monsterville. That's the name of my setting. It's a made-up place, but I was creating this place is called Monsterville. And I made sure to describe what kind of town was it. It was a quiet town. So, let's read my first sentence. It says, Mr. Mo was a helpful monster who lived in the quiet town of Monsterville. Okay, so in this first sentence, I quickly let my reader know the name of my character and where the story takes place. But of course, we need more description about Mr. Mo. So let's see. What else do I want to include? I'm looking at my plot map. We need to describe what Mr. Mo looks like. So go ahead, we can say he was a blue, fluffy monster. That's true, I'm showing what he looks like. Blue and fluffy. He's a blue, fluffy monster who, what did he love to do? Oh, Mr. Mo's friendly. I want to show my reader Mr. Mo is friendly by saying, who loved to smile, his crooked smile. So one way you can see or show that someone's friendly is they smile. So I wanted to make sure I was able to show my reader how Mr. Mo was friendly. One of the character traits from my plot map. Okay, let's go over and read what I have again. Mr. Mo was a helpful monster who lived in the quiet town of Monsterville. He was a blue, fluffy monster who loved to smile his crooked smile. And I made sure to describe what did the smile look like. It was a crooked smile. Awesome. Okay, so let's write one more sentence, and this is where I want to start connecting it to the problem. So remember that Mr. Mo was helpful. He loved to cook. That became the problem in my story, that there was no more food. So I want to make sure, as I'm ending my introduction, it's going to flow right in and connect to the problem that Mr. Mo didn't have enough food. So let's see. So I'm going to say, but most of all, Mr. Mo loved to cook. That's something he loves to do, to love to cook for his big, crazy Mo's love of cooking and his family, which is going to go right into my problem that there wasn't enough food for the feast. It might be a little bit challenging to think ahead like that, but I want you to give it your best shot to try and start connecting your paragraphs together. And when I was describing Mr. Mo's family, I made sure to give adjectives, saying they were big and crazy and lots of fun. Okay, with this introduction in my story, let's read it one last time to make sure all the sentences fit together, they're all talking about the same thing, and each sentence is complete and says what I want it to. Okay. Mr. Mo was a helpful monster who lived in the quiet town of Monsterville. He was a blue, fluffy monster who loved to smile his crooked smile. But most of all, Mr. Mo loved to cook for his big, crazy family. So, in my introduction, there's so much you learned when you met the new character of Mr. Mo. I included many different descriptions and worked to show my reader who Mr. Mo was and set up my story for the rest. So, second grade, you're going to do the exact same thing all on your awesome own. You're going to take your plot map that you created and we looked at and check out that introduction. What you wrote in your introduction is your tool. Use it and write it down in complete, descriptive, showing sentences. You're going to take the time to create the introduction using what you already have to introduce your character and the setting. So you want to do this on a brand new piece of paper, and a notebook or a piece of paper that you are going to save. When we're drafting, you need to be writing in the same spot on the same paper. So wherever you're starting your introduction, you need to save it and keep it for Wednesday when we add to it. So make sure you choose a spot that you can save your work. Okay, Super Scholars. We spent so much awesome time brainstorming. I can't wait to see your first drafts of your paragraphs. So remember, I want you to go really, really slow. I want you to show your writing. And I want you to reread what you wrote. Read it out loud to check that it's really what you meant. Okay, Super Scholars, I trust you. So go ahead, get those map and papers out, and let's get writing.